Greetings, Namo Buddhaya. In this module number 32, I shall be talking about as to whether the decline of Buddhism took place because of moral and ethical corruption, sectarianism, and the rise of Mahayana and Vajrayana. Moral and ethical corruption in the Sangha is sometimes suggested as the core cause of the decline of Buddhism in India. An examination of the sizable Buddhist as well as non-Buddhist textual material spanning the entire period of the history of Buddhism in India indicates that many disgruntled and frustrated persons joined the Sangha under circumstances of compulsion. Such undesirable and irresponsible elements were clearly not expected to live up to the ideals set by the Buddha. Despite the Buddha having been compelled to enact rules banning the entry of undesirable elements into the Sangha, such rules did not necessarily keep unwanted elements from making way into the Sangha. Though many of the examples given in the Vinay Pitaka of pregnant nuns and of monks committing theft and murders may have been imaginary rather than true, it would be impossible to deny that moral and ethical corruption existed in the Sangha. The parting of ways between the Buddha and Devdutt in connection with the five punctilious practices, Dutangas, indicates that all was not well within the Sangha even at the time of the Buddha. Early texts like the Ther Gatha lament that bhikkhus who once forsook wealth, wives and children now do evil for the sake of a spoonful of rice and cheats, frauds, false witnesses, unscrupulous, enjoying the things of the flesh. Similarly, the Jatakas acknowledge that easy life in the Sangha began to tempt many undesirable characters, and that there were certainly some people who entered the Sangha because they found living easier inside the Sangha than on the outside. It cannot be denied that laxity in the Sangha grew to the point where monks in large numbers were pocketing individual or community wealth and engaging in several other indiscretions. Different councils called from time to time also pointed to the fact that the Sangha was faced with matters relating to indiscipline and moral turpitude. There is sufficient evidence to show that there were monks who did not fully cooperate with the Buddha during his lifetime and with his chief disciples like Mahakassapa, Upali and Anand after his death. The refusal of the Buddha to appoint any person as his successor and his declaration that after him the Dharma alone would be the instructor of the Sangha must have given opportunities to centrifugal tendencies for different considerations, thus leading to the formation of different groups. Moreover, the years following the parinirvana were marked by a process of growth with respect to wealth, membership and complexity of the Sangha. The first major schism which took place when a large number of Vajjian monks from the eastern regions like Vaishali advocated 10 extravagances which according to orthodox monks were violations of the rules of the Vinaya. The advocates of the 10 extravagances seceded from the original group called Sthavirvadins or Thervadins and styled themselves as the Mahasangikas. According to the Sri Lankan chronicles, they convened their own council and drew up resolutions in keeping with their own views. This council became known under the name of Mahasangika or Mahasangiti. On the occasion of the third council, Ashoka is said to have expelled 60,000 bogus monks from the Sangha for practicing many things that were a breach of the Vinaya rules. Chinese pilgrims Faxian, Xuanzang and Yiching refer to the Buddhist Sangha owning movable and immovable property in substantial quantities. It had become quite normal for Buddhist viharas to own servants, cattle, land, granaries and villages for the purpose of maintaining their residence. There is evidence to show that some of the prominent viharas had become so influential that they not only began to issue their own seals and coins, but as a result of the possession of property in such proportions, they were also in a position to extend their power and influence in their respective localities. Texts such as the Chaturbhani, the Rashtrapal Pariprichha Sutra, the Mat Vilas and the Das Kumar Charit talk about monks and nuns indulging in practices that were in violation of every possible rule of the Vinaya. Looking at such affairs of state, one is tempted to say that corrupt practices had become prevalent in the Buddhist Sangha. However, at the same time, it must be said that not all practices could really be called corrupt as such, much less harmful to the health of the Sangha. For instance, it would be difficult to understand the logic behind ownership of land, servants, granaries and precious metals by viharas being the cause of the decline of religion, even if its founder had advocated otherwise. Thus, it is difficult to believe that corrupt practices in a religion would necessarily lead to its decline. In any case, laxity in discipline of religious life also existed in other contemporary religions. The Vaishnavas, the Bhagavatas, the Pauranikas, the Shrotriyas have also been ridiculed and chastised from time to time. Many religious trusts, temples and shrines are run in the present times like money-grabbing business houses, and their managements are not exactly paragons of virtue. Still, they continue to thrive. In other words, it is not possible to establish a relationship between the decline of religion and its moral and ethical corruption. Moreover, though moral laxity did corrupt the Buddhist Sangha at certain times and places, still it would be manifestly wrong to say that it had assumed a universal character. It is also important to remember here that alongside these corrupt monks and nuns, we are reminded of the existence of bhikkhus and bhikkhunis who lived remarkably clean and exemplary lives. Thus, it would be wrong to create an impression that the Buddhist Sangha had become corrupt, lock, stock and barrel. The Sangha had never turned into an institution in disgrace. There is no well-documented evidence to prove that Buddhism was abandoned by its supporters for the reason that it had turned into a corrupt religion. Besides, as many of the examples of corrupt bhikkhus and bhikkhunis are from an early period, then the question arises as to how did Buddhism manage to keep its presence felt as late as the early medieval period. Clearly, moral and ethical degeneracy cannot be considered as the real cause of the decline of Buddhism in India. Then the question of sectarianism and the rise of Mahayana and Vajrayana.